The empty classroom. The spare room, once brimming with juvenile exuberance, now echoed with a forlorn quiet. Mrs. Willowbrook's fingers traced the satiny sheen of a miniature desk, its polished surface reflecting the mellow afternoon light. Each item occupied its designated spot, the alphabet poster hung plumb, the globe stood sentinel, awaiting inquisitive hands, and precisely stacked papers rested in labeled trays. Immaculate. Utterly devoid of life. She sighed, a mere puff of breath lost in the pervasive stillness. Retirement had dangled the promise of leisure, an opportunity to finally delve into the neglected novels on her shelves, yet the silence resonated like a persistent hum. She yearned for the chorus of queries, the peals of childish laughter, the sheer, glorious pandemonium of a classroom in session. Today, she resolved to transform the room from a shrine to her career into something more. What that more might be remained a mystery. She initiated the transformation by relocating the art supplies. The paintbrushes, meticulously cleansed and arranged by size, seemed to level accusations. So many endeavors completed, a multitude of potential masterpieces unrealized. Shifting them offered a fresh perspective, a chance to stimulate a new thought. A small, rectangular box beckoned from the rear of a drawer, nearly forgotten. Nestled within protective tissue, lay a collection of time-worn photo albums. She extracted one, its cover faded from years of handling. The initial page showcased a class portrait from her inaugural year. Attentive faces peered back, a blend of apprehension and anticipation etched on their features. She recalled each child distinctly, mischievous Timmy, timid Sarah, who flourished with encouragement, and Michael, challenged by reading but blessed with remarkable artistic talent. Turning the page, a smile softened her expression. A snapshot captured the class planting a sapling in the school garden. Their dirt-smudged hands converged on a shared purpose. She remembered the swell of hope that day, the notion that they were not merely planting a tree, but cultivating a sense of responsibility and a connection to the earth. Another image displayed the class during a museum visit, children clustered around a dinosaur skeleton, their faces lit with wonder. She could almost hear their hushed exclamations, their bottomless well of questions about the primeval world. As she perused the pages, a wave of nostalgia surged through her. These were not mere photographs, they were fragments of her life, echoes of countless moments shared with her students. They served as reminders of the impact she had wielded, the lives she had influenced. However, the feeling carried a melancholic undertone. The elation evoked by those recollections was tempered by a sense of absence. The children frozen in time had matured, embarked on their own journeys. And she remained here, amidst the specters of classrooms past. She closed the album and returned it to its box. Perhaps lingering in the past offered no escape from the emptiness. She needed a new pursuit, something to capture her imagination and rekindle her spirit. Her gaze settled on a corkboard on the wall, usually adorned with youthful artwork. Now, only a lone flyer remained, tacked haphazardly in the corner, an advertisement for a local bake sale, organized to benefit the community center. A bake sale. Not teaching, per se, but an opportunity to engage with the community, to contribute meaningfully. And her apple pie, based on her grandmother's recipe, was legendary. A spark of interest flickered within her. It wasn't a roomful of students, but perhaps it was a beginning. A gentle foray back into the world, a means of discovering new purpose in her retirement. She plucked the flyer from the board and scrutinized it. The bake sale was scheduled for the following Saturday at the town square. A week to prepare. A plan began to take shape. She would bake her apple pie, of course. Perhaps some chocolate chip cookies, a favorite among her former students. Maybe even a small table offering complimentary tutoring for neighborhood children, utilizing some of her old educational materials. The more she considered it, the more animated she became. While not a substitute for teaching, it presented a chance to impart her knowledge and skills. To make a difference, however modest. She approached her desk and withdrew a notepad, beginning a list of ingredients as a smile graced her lips. Apple pie, chocolate chip cookies, and perhaps even a batch of her famous lemon bars. As she wrote, a sense of direction returned. The empty classroom still loomed, but its desolation seemed slightly diminished. The bake sale wouldn't entirely fill the void, but it was a step forward. A chance to reconnect, contribute, to feel useful once again. And who knew, maybe she would encounter new acquaintances, people who could guide her toward her place in this next phase of her life. Timmy's troubles. Timmy's lip quivered. The figures on the assignment blurred, an indecipherable mess of symbols and arcane formulas. He worried the end of his pencil, the woody taste doing nothing to calm the storm of annoyance brewing within him. Mrs. Crabtree's explanation during class seemed lucid enough at the time, or so he'd thought. Now, confronted by the paper before him, it felt akin to translating hieroglyphs. He tapped the eraser against his incisors, a habit his mom usually found infuriating. However, solitude amplified the crushing sensation of utter helplessness. The equation glared back, 3x plus 5, 2x equals 17. What even was x? A letter, yes, but devoid of meaning. Simply, there. Taunting him. Timmy expelled a breath, a small, defeated sound. He stole a glance at the clock, 6:17 p.m. Mom would arrive soon, weary from a long day at the hospital. He knew the inevitable homework inquiry was coming. And he would have to confess, yet again, his lack of comprehension. His stomach tightened at the thought. He attempted another approach, rewriting the problem on a fresh sheet. Perhaps neatness would conjure a solution. He applied the 3, as Mrs. Crabtree had demonstrated, transcribing 3x plus 15, 2x equals 17. Good, passable even, but where to next? He recalled something about unifying similar elements, but which qualified? And what did the instruction even entail? He pressed his eyelids shut, visualizing Mrs. Crabtree at the whiteboard, pointer insistently tapping. He could almost hear her voice, yet the specific guidance remained elusive, lost in the haze of his bewilderment. Opening his eyes, the equation remained an enigma. A solitary tear broke free, carving a glistening path down his cheek. He swiped it away with a graphite-stained hand. He loathed math. He loathed feeling dim-witted. He longed to grasp it, as some classmates did with ease. Yet, despite earnest effort, understanding remained out of reach. Another tear followed, then several more. Soon, he wept openly, sobs racking his slight form. He crushed the worksheet in his palm, the crumpled paper a physical representation of his inadequacy. Burying his face in his forearms, his muffled cries filled the quiet space. The front door hinges groaned downstairs, followed by the familiar tread of Mom's tired feet. Timmy's heart plunged. Concealing his tears was impossible, she always knew. Timmy? I'm home. Sarah Peterson called, her tone laced with exhaustion. She towed off her shoes by the doorway, the simple motion releasing a sigh she hadn't realized she suppressed. The hospital had been chaotic, a traffic incident, complex surgery, and endless medication rounds. She craved a hot shower and a tranquil night. But ascending the staircase, she registered the distinct sound of her son's weeping. Her weariness evaporated, replaced by a wave of maternal concern. She rushed down the hallway, reaching for Timmy's door. She discovered him slumped at his desk, his shoulders trembling. A wadded piece of paper rested beside him. "Timmy, sweetheart, what's wrong?" she inquired, her voice gentle with anxiety. He looked up, his face flushed and tear-streaked, his eyes swollen. I can't," he choked out, gesturing weakly at the paper. "I don't get it." Sarah knelt down, drawing him into an embrace. "It's okay," she murmured, stroking his hair. "Tell me, what is it? Let's have a look." He pulled back slightly, swiping at his face with his sleeve. "Math," he mumbled. It's pointless. Sarah offered a weak smile. Math isn't pointless, honey. It can be challenging. She picked up the crumpled sheet and flattened it, her gaze sweeping across the problem. Algebra. It had been ages since she'd encountered it. She brushed a hand through her own hair, feeling the day's burden settle upon her. She should be able to assist him. She wanted to. But after 12 hours on her feet, her brain felt like oatmeal. And facing the equation, she conceded that even on a good day, she might struggle. "All right," she said, attempting a confident tone. "Let's see. We need to, She gestured at the 3x plus 5. "So, the 3, you have to carry it?" She inwardly cringed. That was incorrect. Timmy regarded her, his expression a blend of hope and confusion. Mrs. Crabtree mentioned something about distribution, he offered tentatively. "Distributing?" "Yes, of course," Sarah replied, her voice a touch too emphatic. She tried to recall the mechanics of distribution, but her mind drew a blank. The numbers seemed to dance mockingly, mirroring Timmy's experience. She sighed internally. She was exacerbating the situation. A wave of guilt washed over her. She should be capable of helping her child with his assignment. But tonight, she simply couldn't. "You know what, sweetie," she said, forcing a smile. "How about we take a break? We can order pizza, put on a movie, and revisit this in the morning, okay? Perhaps after some rest, my brain will function more effectively." Timmy regarded her, his eyes still reddened, but the tears had subsided. "You promise you'll help me?" "I promise," Sarah said, squeezing his hand. "We'll solve it together." She knew she would need assistance. Maybe one of her nursing colleagues could help. Maybe a tutor. She would devise a plan. She always did. But for the moment, she simply desired to embrace her son and ignore the numbers, the equations, and the overwhelming sense of inadequacy. A flyer of hope. The harsh fluorescent lights of the community center buzzed overhead, their sterile glare illuminating a corkboard overflowing with notices. Sarah's gaze darted across the chaotic collage: yoga classes, stray cats, band rehearsals. She'd promised Timmy a lifeline, an escape from the daunting math problems, and this place, with its implied network of support, seemed a viable starting point. The faint scent of chlorine mingled with the aroma of weak coffee emanating from a nearby kitchenette. From the gymnasium, peals of children's laughter provided a stark counterpoint to the quiet despair gnawing at Sarah's insides. What she needed went beyond mere childcare. She sought someone capable of deciphering the algebraic enigmas plaguing her son. Approaching the information desk, the cool linoleum offered little comfort beneath her worn sneakers. A young woman, sporting vibrant pink hair and an array of piercings, looked up from her phone screen. "Can I help you find something?" Her voice, surprisingly soft, cut through the ambient noise. "Yes, I'm looking for details on after-school programs, particularly any that offer academic support," Sarah replied, her voice betraying a hint of underlying worry. The woman tapped at her keyboard. "We have a couple of options. The homework buddies meet twice a week, but it's mostly peer-to-peer learning. We also partner with the local high school, where some students volunteer as tutors." She paused, scanning the screen. "Those slots are pretty much all spoken for, though." Sarah felt her hopes deflate, her shoulders subtly dropping. Peer tutoring wouldn't resonate with Timmy, he needed personalized guidance. The high school alternative felt impersonal, perhaps even intimidating. "Anything else available?" she asked, carefully masking her disappointment. "Hang on," the woman swiveled, her gaze drifting to the cluttered corkboard. "Aha! This might be just the thing." She plucked a flyer from the board. A simple, handwritten notice printed on sunshine yellow paper caught the light. The heading declared, "Struggling with schoolwork? Tutoring available." Beneath, in elegant cursive, was the name, Mrs. Eleanor Willowbrook, followed by a phone number and a brief description, experienced retired educator dedicated to student success. All subjects, grades K-8. Patience, encouragement, and fun guaranteed. A small drawing of an apple decorated the corner. A flicker of something akin to warmth sparked in Sarah's chest, a fragile seed of optimism. This could be promising, she murmured, tracing the apple with her fingertip. Do you have any information about her? The woman shrugged. She's been posting these for a while. Seems pleasant enough. Quite a few parents have expressed interest. Clutching the flyer, Sarah walked back to her car, her fingers trembling almost imperceptibly. On the passenger seat, the slip of yellow paper glowed in the afternoon light. She stared at the phone number, a knot of unease tightening in her stomach. What if Mrs. Willowbrook's rates were prohibitive? What if she couldn't connect with Timmy, just another teacher unable to reach him? What if this, too, proved a false lead? But the memory of Timmy's tearful face, the desperate plea etched in his eyes, pushed her forward. She grabbed her phone and dialed. After 3 rings, a warm, slightly tremulous voice answered. Hello? Hello, Mrs. Willowbrook. My name is Sarah Peterson. I found your flyer at the community center, regarding tutoring services, Sarah began, striving for a confident tone despite the tremor in her voice. Oh, yes. Hello, Sarah. How lovely to hear from you. How can I assist you? Mrs. Willowbrook's voice exuded a comforting gentleness. Well, my son, Timmy, is having difficulties with math, and I'm struggling to help. I was hoping you might be available to tutor him. A brief pause followed, then Mrs. Willowbrook inquired, would be delighted to meet Timmy. What grade is he in? He's in 5th grade. 5th grade. A fantastic year. So much waiting to be discovered. Tell me, Sarah, what seems to be the crux of Timmy's difficulties? Sarah hesitated, considering her words. How to adequately convey the nightly battles, the tears of frustration, the overwhelming feeling of helplessness that had enveloped their evenings. He just doesn't seem to grasp the core concepts. He becomes easily disheartened, and then just gives up trying. I understand perfectly, Mrs. Willowbrook responded, her voice filled with genuine understanding. That's quite common. Mathematics can be perplexing, particularly when taught without proper explanation of how things work. I specialize in making math engaging and relevant. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Engaging and relevant? Those descriptors had long since vanished from her vocabulary when discussing mathematics. That sounds incredible. Would it be at all possible to meet sometime this week to discuss this in greater detail? Absolutely. How does tomorrow afternoon sound? Perhaps around 4 o'clock. That would be ideal, Sarah replied, feeling a wave of relief. Where would you like us to meet? I have a small, sun-drenched study in my home. I've found that a home environment helps the children learn. Would that work for you? Yes, that sounds wonderful, Sarah replied, quickly jotting down Mrs. Willowbrook's address in her notebook. As the call ended, Sarah felt an unexpected lightness, a feeling she hadn't known for weeks. A glimmer of hope had broken through, a promise of a solution, a chance to alleviate Timmy's academic woes and, as a consequence, her own. Perhaps, just perhaps, Mrs. Willowbrook was the answer they desperately needed. First impressions. Timmy perched on the edge of a plush armchair in the library's children's section, his sneakers swinging nervously above the patterned carpet. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air and casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and shrink with his anxiety. He clutched his worn copy of The Hobbit, the familiar comfort doing little to soothe the butterflies fluttering in his stomach. He checked his watch for the 5th time in as many minutes. Mrs. Willowbrook was late. He gnawed on his lip, picturing 100 different scenarios, maybe she'd forgotten. Maybe she'd gotten stuck in traffic. Or worse, maybe she'd decided, after talking to his mom, that he was a hopeless case, a lost cause in the world of fractions and formulas. The thought made his stomach clench. He glanced around the children's section. A small girl with pigtails was engrossed in a picture book, her brow furrowed in concentration. A mother read aloud to her toddler, her voice a soothing melody amidst the quiet hum of the library. Everyone seemed so calm, so at ease. He wished he could be. Just as his anxiety threatened to overwhelm him, he saw her. A woman with a cascade of silver hair pulled back in a loose bun, a kind face etched with laugh lines, and eyes that twinkled with warmth. She wore a cardigan the color of lavender and carried a large, colorful tote bag. It had to be her. Mrs. Willowbrook spotted him and her face lit up with a smile that reached her eyes. "Timmy?" she asked, her voice gentle and melodic. He scrambled to his feet, his cheeks flushing. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Timmy. It's so lovely to finally meet you, Timmy," she said, extending a hand. Her hand was warm and soft, and her grip was surprisingly firm. "Please, call me Eleanor." He shook her hand, feeling a little of his nervousness dissipate. "Okay," he mumbled. "I'm so sorry I'm a few minutes late," Eleanor said, her brow furrowing slightly. "The traffic was a bit enthusiastic this morning." She chuckled, and Timmy found himself smiling in return. "It's okay," he said, feeling a surge of relief that she hadn't forgotten him. Eleanor gestured to the armchair he'd been occupying. "Shall we sit? I brought a few things that might make math a little more palatable." She winked, and Timmy couldn't help but grin. She placed the tote bag on the floor and opened it, revealing a treasure trove of colorful objects, brightly colored blocks, a deck of cards with whimsical illustrations, a game board with spinning wheels and dice. It looked less like a math lesson and more like a party. Timmy's eyes widened. "Wow," he breathed. Eleanor pulled out a set of interlocking cubes. "These are my favorites. We can build towers, create patterns, and even learn about fractions without even realizing we're doing math." Timmy hesitated. He'd always hated math. It was a jumble of confusing rules and impossible problems. But Eleanor's enthusiasm was infectious, and the games looked fun. I'm not very good at math," he confessed, his voice barely a whisper. Eleanor's expression softened. "Timmy, nobody is good at everything right away. Math is like learning to ride a bike. You might fall a few times, but with practice, you'll get there. And I'll be right here to help you up every time you stumble." Her words were comforting, reassuring. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw genuine kindness in her eyes. Maybe, just maybe, this wouldn't be so bad. Eleanor picked up the deck of cards. "How about we start with a little game? It involves numbers, but it's mostly about strategy and a little bit of luck." Timmy shuffled his feet. "What kind of game?" "It's called Math Mania," Eleanor said with a mischievous grin. "I invented it myself." Timmy's curiosity was piqued. He glanced at the colorful cards, then back at Eleanor's warm smile. A hesitant smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "Okay," he said, a flicker of hope igniting within him. "I'll try." The magic of math games. The following Tuesday, Timmy arrived at Mrs. Willowbrook's with a slightly lighter step. The knot in his stomach hadn't entirely disappeared, but it was definitely looser, more like a tangled shoelace than a clenched fist. He still clutched his worn math textbook like a shield, but the gesture felt less desperate, more habitual. Mrs. Willowbrook greeted him with a smile as bright as the autumn sunshine streaming through her bay window. The aroma of freshly baked cookies hung in the air, a welcome distraction from the impending numbers. Today, however, the table wasn't covered in worksheets. Instead, a colorful assortment of building blocks lay scattered across its surface. "Good afternoon, Timmy. Ready for some construction?" Mrs. Willowbrook asked, her eyes twinkling. Timmy eyed the blocks with curiosity. Construction? I thought we were doing fractions today. We are, she declared, gesturing towards the blocks. These are fraction factories. We're going to build fractions, take them apart, and see how they work. She picked up a large, square block. This is our whole. Imagine it's a chocolate bar. A very big chocolate bar. Timmy's eyes widened slightly. Chocolate was a language he understood perfectly. Mrs. Willowbrook took a smaller, rectangular block and placed it on top of the square, covering half of it. This is one half of the chocolate bar. See? 2 of these make the whole thing. She continued, using different sized blocks to demonstrate thirds, quarters, and even eighths. Timmy, initially hesitant, began to reach out and experiment, fitting the blocks together, dividing the chocolate bar into smaller and smaller pieces. He discovered that 4 quarter-sized blocks perfectly covered the whole, and that 2 eighth-sized blocks made up a quarter. So, Mrs. Willowbrook asked gently, if you had half the chocolate bar, and I ate a quarter of the whole bar, how much would you have left? Timmy paused, his brow furrowed in concentration. He grabbed the blocks representing a half and a quarter. He arranged them carefully, pushing and pulling them until it clicked. A quarter, he announced, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. Exactly. Mrs. Willowbrook beamed. You just conquered fractions with chocolate and blocks. For the rest of the hour, they built fraction towers, compared sizes, and even created fraction recipes. Timmy was so engrossed that he barely noticed the time passing. The textbook remained unopened, a silent testament to the power of hands-on learning. The following session, Mrs. Willowbrook introduced a board game called Multiplication Mayhem. The game board was a colorful spiral, each space marked with a multiplication problem. Players rolled a die and moved their game piece, solving the problem on the space they landed on. Correct answers earned them points, and the first player to reach the center of the spiral won. Timmy's initial apprehension returned. I'm not very good at multiplication, he mumbled, picking at a loose thread on his jeans. That's perfectly all right, Mrs. Willowbrook said reassuringly. We'll work together. And remember, even if you don't get it right away, every mistake is a chance to learn. They started the game, Mrs. Willowbrook patiently guiding Timmy through each problem. She didn't simply give him the answers, instead, she helped him break down the numbers, visualizing them with small objects, buttons from her sewing kit. She showed him how multiplication was just a shortcut for repeated addition. As the game progressed, Timmy's confidence grew. He started to answer the questions more quickly, and with fewer prompts from Mrs. Willowbrook. He even started to enjoy the challenge, his competitive spirit kicking in. At one point, he landed on a particularly difficult problem, 7 by 8. He hesitated, his brow furrowed in concentration. Mrs. Willowbrook started to reach for the buttons, but Timmy stopped her. Wait, he said, closing his eyes. He muttered to himself, 7 times 7 is 49, and then add another 7. He paused, his lips moving silently. Then, his eyes snapped open. 56, he exclaimed, a wide grin spreading across his face. Mrs. Willowbrook clapped her hands together. That's fantastic, Timmy. You figured it out all by yourself. Timmy beamed, his chest swelling with pride. He rolled the die again, eager to continue. As the game went on, Timmy started laughing, a genuine, unrestrained laugh that Mrs. Willowbrook hadn't heard from him before. He laughed when he landed on a space that required him to multiply by 1, that's too easy, and he laughed when Mrs. Willowbrook accidentally knocked over her game piece. Oops. Multiplication mayhem indeed. For the first time, math wasn't a source of anxiety and frustration. It was fun. It was a game, a puzzle, a challenge that he was actually enjoying. When the tutoring session ended, Timmy gathered his things, a lightness in his step that hadn't been there before. He thanked Mrs. Willowbrook, his voice filled with genuine enthusiasm. "See you next week, Timmy," Mrs. Willowbrook said, her eyes twinkling. "And remember, the magic of math is always there, waiting to be discovered." As Timmy walked home, he didn't clutch his textbook like a shield. Instead, he swung it loosely by his side, a faint smile playing on his lips. He even caught himself mentally calculating the number of steps it took to get from Mrs. Willowbrook's house to his own. Maybe, just maybe, math wasn't so bad after all. Building confidence. Timmy practically vaulted into the kitchen, backpack askew. Usually, he'd drag himself home, chin tucked low. Today, a subtle grin played at the edge of his mouth. Sarah, wrestling with bills at the cramped table, barely noticed his entrance. "Mom, hey." Startled, she brushed a lock of hair from her face. "Hey, hon, how was your day?" "Great." He jettisoned his pack with a muffled thump and brandished his math sheet, a testament to neat calculations. "Check it out." He presented it like a winning lottery ticket. Sarah peered at the page. A jumble of numbers, symbols, and fractions, almost hieroglyphic. Yet, even she could discern a difference. The answers weren't merely present, they radiated certainty. No longer the chaotic jumble of crossed-out attempts. "Wow, Timmy. This is fantastic." Genuine pride bloomed within her. Did you actually understand all this?" A subtle puff of his chest. "Yep. Mrs. Willowbrook showed me, using blocks and stuff. It's almost fun." He snagged an apple from the bowl. "Snack before reading?" "Absolutely, sweetie." Sarah watched him, emotion thickening her throat. It was more than just the homework. It was his posture, the rekindled glint in his eyes. Mrs. Willowbrook was unlocking something beyond arithmetic, she was resurrecting his self-assurance. "You know," she began, a touch hesitant, "I truly appreciate how hard you're working, Timmy. I know math can be a bear." He shrugged, taking a hearty bite. "It's okay now. Not so scary." His grin flashed, a glimpse of the carefree boy she knew. "Mrs. Willowbrook says I'm becoming a fractions whiz." Later in the week, with Saturday looming, Timmy vibrated with unusual anticipation. Weekends usually meant cartoons and Leo, his best pal. But this Saturday promised something brighter, another session with Mrs. Willowbrook. He even pitched in with tidying the living room, a task he typically avoided with fervent dedication. His gaze kept darting to the clock, a silent, insistent drumbeat. "Someone's excited," Sarah observed, amused. Timmy blushed, toeing the carpet. I want to show Mrs. Willowbrook I practiced that multiplication game." Her heart swelled at his eagerness. "Well, have a wonderful time, honey. And tell Mrs. Willowbrook I send my thanks again." By Monday, Mrs. Sterling, his regular math instructor, had also clocked the alteration. Beyond the improved homework, Timmy was engaging in class. Still reserved, yes, but a newfound daring flickered within. During a lesson on decimals, Mrs. Sterling presented a particularly thorny problem, converting fractions into their decimal equivalents. A wall of blank stares met her. She sighed internally, steeling herself for the usual struggle. Then, a small hand tentatively pierced the air. Timmy's. Her eyebrows arched in surprise. "Yes, Timmy?" His voice, a mere thread of sound. "Is it 0.75? Mrs. Sterling paused, relishing the moment. "And how did you arrive at that solution, Timmy?" she probed, careful not to let her encouragement overwhelm him. He articulated his reasoning, stumbling occasionally, yet ultimately delivering a lucid and precise explanation. A ripple of surprised murmurs swept across the room. Mrs. Sterling beamed. "Precisely correct, Timmy. Excellent." She conspicuously wrote his name on the whiteboard under Math Aces. Timmy ducked his head, a blush blooming on his cheeks, but a faint smile played on his lips. A warmth surged through him, foreign and pleasant. Not just from the praise, but from the realization of understanding, of competence. After the bell, as the other students streamed out, Mrs. Sterling beckoned Timmy to her desk. He approached cautiously, wondering if he'd erred somehow. "Timmy," she said gently, "I've noticed a marked improvement in your math lately. Your confidence is radiating." He scuffed his shoe against the floor. "I've been getting a little extra help," he mumbled, reluctant to boast. "Well, it's certainly yielding results. Keep up the stellar work. And don't hesitate to share your insights with the class. You might be surprised how many others are grappling with the same challenges." Timmy nodded, standing a bit straighter. He left the room imbued with a revitalized sense of purpose. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, he felt a seed of belief taking root. The mountain of math still seemed immense, yet now, he possessed a map and a guide. Perhaps, just perhaps, he possessed the resolve to ascend. The mayor's pride. "Did you hear about my grandson, Timmy?" Mayor Thompson boomed, his voice echoing slightly in the wood-paneled conference room. He leaned back in his leather chair, a picture of relaxed authority. Around the table, the town council members exchanged polite smiles. They knew the mayor's pride in his family, particularly his grandchildren. "Can't say that I have, Mayor," Councilman Davies offered, carefully placing his pen beside a stack of budget reports. "But I'm sure we're all ears." Thompson beamed, a genuine, fatherly pride radiating from him. "Well, Timmy's always been a bit of a dreamer. Wonderful imagination, that boy. But academics? Especially mathematics? Let's just say it wasn't his strong suit. His mother, Sarah, bless her heart, has been worried sick. But something's clicked. His grades have skyrocketed. Mrs. Sterling called me just yesterday, said he's practically acing the algebra now." A ripple of murmurs went around the table, a mixture of congratulations and mild surprise. Mayor Thompson's family was a fixture in Willow Creek. Their successes were everyone's successes, and their struggles were felt by all. "That's wonderful news, Mayor," Councilwoman Rodriguez said, her voice warm. "It's so important for our young people to succeed. Strong academics build a strong community." "Exactly." Thompson thumped the table lightly. "And that's why I've been thinking, we need to celebrate these achievements. Foster a love of learning in our town. Encourage healthy competition." He paused for dramatic effect, his eyes twinkling. "Which is why, I'm pleased to announce, we'll be holding a town-wide math competition." The room buzzed with excitement. A math competition was an innovative idea, something Willow Creek hadn't seen before. It felt refreshing. "A math competition, Mayor?" Councilman Davies asked, intrigued. "How do you envision that working?" "Details are still being ironed out," Thompson admitted with a dismissive wave of his hand. "But the gist is this: categories for different age groups, challenging problems, and, of course, prizes. We'll hold it at the town hall, make it a real community event. Get the local bakery to donate cookies, maybe even a band. Make it fun." The idea resonated with the council. Willow Creek was a town that thrived on community spirit, and a math competition seemed like a perfect fit. It also conveniently showcased the mayor's commitment to education, a point not lost on anyone in the room. Later that evening, the town hall was packed. The air thrummed with the energy of a small town buzzing with anticipation. Flyers announcing the math competition were plastered on every available surface, featuring a cartoon abacus and the slogan, "Willow Creek Counts." Mayor Thompson stood at the podium, a picture of jovial leadership. "My fellow residents of Willow Creek," he began, his voice amplified by the microphone. "Tonight, I want to talk about the future. Our children are our future, and their education is the cornerstone of that future." He paused, letting his words sink in. We need to celebrate academic achievement, encourage a love of learning, and foster a spirit of friendly competition. He gestured towards a large banner that was unveiled behind him, revealing the official logo of the Willow Creek Math Competition. The crowd applauded enthusiastically. I'm especially proud, Thompson continued, his voice softening slightly, because I've seen firsthand the power of dedication and hard work. My own grandson, Timmy, has been working incredibly hard in his math classes. And the results have been remarkable. A few heads turned, searching for Timmy in the crowd. Sarah, sitting near the back, blushed slightly and squeezed Timmy's hand. He fidgeted nervously, his eyes fixed on the floor. This competition, Thompson declared, his voice regaining its booming quality, is for all of our students, for all of our residents who love a good challenge. I encourage everyone to participate, to test their skills, and to show the world that Willow Creek is a town that values intelligence and ingenuity. The applause was deafening. Mayor Thompson beamed, basking in the adulation. As the meeting adjourned and people began to file out, he spotted Sarah and Timmy near the exit. He made his way over to them, a warm smile on his face. Sarah, Timmy. Wonderful to see you both, he said, enveloping Sarah in a hug. Then, he turned to Timmy, placing a hand on his shoulder. Timmy, I'm so proud of you, son. Your hard work is really paying off. Timmy mumbled a thank you, still avoiding eye contact. Now, about this competition, the mayor continued, his voice carefully measured. No pressure at all, of course. But I think you'd be fantastic, Timmy. A real representative for Willow Creek. Sarah smiled encouragingly at her son. It's up to you, Timmy. No one is forcing you to do anything you don't want to. Timmy looked up at his grandfather, his eyes filled with a mixture of apprehension and a flicker of something that might have been excitement. The thought of competing, of putting his newfound skills on display, was terrifying. But the idea of representing his town, of making his grandfather proud, was undeniably appealing. I don't know, Grandpa, he stammered. It sounds really hard. Mayor Thompson chuckled. Of course it's hard, Timmy. But you're a smart boy. You've got what it takes. Just think about it. No rush. But know that I'll be cheering you on, no matter what you decide. He winked, then clapped Timmy on the back. Now, you two run along. I've got a few more hands to shake. As they walked out of the town hall, Timmy was silent, his mind racing. The weight of his grandfather's expectations, the thrill of the challenge, and the lingering fear of failure all battled for dominance in his young heart. A challenge accepted. Timmy edged into Mrs. Willowbrook's sunlit kitchen, the scent of warm bread a comforting counterpoint to the butterflies erupting in his stomach. A crumpled flyer felt prickly in his sweaty palm, its cheerful design a stark contrast to the unease churning inside him. Trouble's brewing, Timmy? Mrs. Willowbrook's voice, a soothing balm, accompanied the removal of a fragrant loaf from the oven. Rising heat softened the wrinkles etched by time and kindness on her face. He swallowed, a stubborn knot lodged in his throat. He extended the flyer. Grandpa, he announced this. She accepted it, her brow creasing almost imperceptibly as she took in the bold proclamation of the Willow Creek Math Mania competition. A small, smiling image of Mayor Thompson, Grandpa, occupied a corner. Her gaze met Timmy's, his expression a study in worry. And your thoughts on this, young man? She inquired, placing the paper on the counter. I don't know, he mumbled, scuffing at a non-existent stain on the floor. It's a lot to take in. Everyone will be watching, and what if I freeze up? The specter of past tests, marked with discouraging corrections, loomed in his mind's eye. His hands grew clammy. Mrs. Willowbrook lowered herself, meeting Timmy at his level. Her eyes held warmth and unwavering support. Timmy, listen to me. This competition, think of it as a chance, plain and simple. A chance to stretch yourself, to see how far you've come. The prize isn't winning or losing. It's the growth you experience. He avoided her gaze, drawn instead to the intricate weave of the braided rug. But Grandpa, he expects me to shine. He's told everyone about our sessions. Your grandfather is proud, Timmy, that's all. He recognizes your hard work and wants to celebrate your progress. However, his expectations shouldn't steer your ship. This is about you. What resonates with you? He hesitated, gnawing on his lip. A faint ember of excitement sparked in the dimness of his apprehension. He had been enjoying their lessons, the satisfying, aha, moments as numbers clicked into place. Perhaps he could actually do this. I'm not sure I'm ready, he confessed, his voice barely audible. Ready? Mrs. Willowbrook chuckled, a melodious, reassuring sound. Timmy, you possess everything you need right now. You are inquisitive, relentless, and eager to learn. Those are the true treasures. And besides, she added with a playful glint, think of it as an opportunity to flaunt those newfound skills. She stood and moved to the counter, slicing a generous slab of the steaming bread. Offering it to him, the aroma of yeast filled the air with comforting promises. Eat. Then we'll discuss how you might prepare, should you choose to accept this challenge. Timmy took the bread, its warmth radiating into his chilled hands. He bit into it, the familiar taste a balm to his nerves. He closed his eyes briefly, savoring the flavor. As he chewed, he pondered her words. Not about triumph, but about learning. About self-improvement. And maybe, just maybe, about demonstrating to Grandpa how far he'd traveled. He swallowed. Okay, he declared, his voice firmer now. Okay, I'll give it a shot. Mrs. Willowbrook beamed, her eyes radiating joy. That's my Timmy. Now, let's roll up our sleeves and get started. The following days became a blur of equations, formulas, and drills. Mrs. Willowbrook fine-tuned their sessions to mirror the competition format, emphasizing both speed and precision. They honed mental calculation techniques and crafted strategies for navigating different problem types. Timmy discovered himself surprisingly absorbed, his initial jitters gradually yielding to a sense of resolve. The sign-up sheet hung prominently on the community notice board outside the Willow Creek General Store. Each time Timmy passed, it seemed to mock him, a constant reminder of the approaching ordeal. He noticed other names scribbled there, classmates, students from rival schools, even a sprinkling of high schoolers. Each signature felt like another obstacle on his path. Finally, one Saturday morning, after a particularly fruitful study session with Mrs. Willowbrook, Timmy realized he could procrastinate no more. Snatching a pen from her overflowing desk, he ventured downtown. The air held a crisp autumn bite, filled with the earthy fragrance of fallen leaves. A vibrant blue sky, flecked with puffy clouds, stretched overhead. A perfect day, save for the nervous knot tightening in his gut. He approached the bulletin board, his heart hammering against his ribs. He scanned the list, seeking an available slot. With a trembling hand, he inscribed his name, Timothy Peterson. As he did, he conjured images of his rivals, all older, cleverer, and primed to overwhelm him with their superior math prowess. He retreated from the board, a curious blend of anticipation and trepidation washing over him. He had done it. He had embraced the gauntlet. Now, all that remained was to run the race. Billy's taunts. The whisper of Timmy's rubber soles skimmed the silent corridors of Willow Creek Elementary as he aimed for the library, hoping to unearth a tome on prime numbers. Their enigmatic nature, hinted at by Mrs. Willowbrook, sparked a blend of trepidation and excitement within him. Only divisible by one and itself. He murmured, such apparent simplicity, yet such profound complexity. He rounded the corner and nearly collided with Sarah Miller, the sixth-grade artist known for her intricate paper sculptures. "Oh, sorry, Sarah." Sarah's smile was gentle. No worries, Timmy. You seem distracted. A blush warmed Timmy's cheeks as he tugged at his backpack strap. Just thinking about the math mania competition. Mrs. Willowbrook's coaching me. The words tasted sweet with pride as he spoke. Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. Really, Timmy? I never knew you were into math. He shrugged, a tentative smile gracing his lips. I'm giving it a shot. Unseen, Billy Bartlett, self-proclaimed mathlete and subject of less flattering epithets, lurked behind a trophy case. He'd been en route to the water fountain when Sarah and Timmy's words snagged his attention. Math mania competition sounded like a challenge, a gauntlet thrown down to his mastery. As Sarah wished Timmy luck and floated toward the art room, Billy peeled himself from the shadows, a sly smirk etched on his face. Well, if it isn't Timmy, whatever. Timmy's stomach took a nosedive. Billy's presence always felt like an approaching squall. Avoiding his gaze, he shuffled. Hi, Billy. Billy sidled closer, his voice dripping with honeyed sarcasm. Math mania, you say? Seriously? Are they handing out participation ribbons now? Maybe a juice box for effort? Crimson stained Timmy's face. He clutched his backpack as a lifeline. Mrs. Willowbrook is helping me. The words emerged frail, lacking conviction. Billy roared with laughter, a brittle, unpleasant sound. Mrs. Willowbrook? Bless her kind heart. She probably sees you as a charity case. Thinks she can transform a mathematical simpleton into a prodigy. He leaned in, his voice a hushed sneer. Be real, Timmy. You struggle with basic arithmetic. You're signing up for humiliation. Timmy's fragile bubble of confidence, so painstakingly inflated by Mrs. Willowbrook, began to deflate. The old anxieties resurfaced, the fear of failure, the sting of inadequacy. Billy's words were corrosive, eating away at his resolve. But I've been working hard, Timmy stammered, his spirit dwindling. He pictured Mrs. Willowbrook's patient tutelage, her encouraging smile. He saw his grandfather, the mayor, beaming with pride. The thought of disappointing them twisted in his gut. Billy chuckled, a sound laced with arrogance. Working hard? How adorable. You think a few practice problems will suddenly unlock genius? I've been dominating math since kindergarten. It's innate. You, on the other hand, he let the implication hang heavy in the air. He tapped his temple. It's about inherent talent, Timmy. Either you possess it, or you don't. And, let's face it, you're not exactly brimming with mathematical prowess. Timmy's eyes dropped to the worn floor. A familiar wave of despair crashed over him. Perhaps Billy was right. Perhaps he was simply out of his depth. Perhaps he was inviting a colossal failure, a humiliating spectacle. Sensing his triumph, Billy clapped Timmy on the shoulder, a gesture more akin to a forceful push. Just trying to spare you the agony, Timmy. Take my advice. Focus on your strengths, whatever they may be. He winked, then strolled toward the water fountain, whistling a carefree melody. Timmy remained rooted to the spot, the vision of the prime number book blurring. A leaden dread settled in his stomach. The library seemed impossibly far away. The math mania competition felt like a distant, unreachable star. He wheeled around and trudged in the opposite direction, the whisper of his sneakers now a lament in the desolate hallway. The newfound confidence had evaporated, replaced by the cold, familiar grip of self-doubt. Preparation and perseverance. The next tutoring session began with Timmy shuffling through the door, head down, shoulders slumped. Mrs. Willowbrook, perched on her usual armchair, greeted him with a warm smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Timmy, dear. Ready for another adventure in the world of numbers? He mumbled a response, barely audible. Mrs. Willowbrook, sensing his unease, set aside her meticulously organized worksheets. "Something on your mind, Timmy?" she asked gently. He hesitated, picking at a loose thread on his jeans. "Billy said. He said I'm not good enough for math mania. That I'll just embarrass myself." Mrs. Willowbrook's expression softened. "And do you believe him?" Timmy looked up, his eyes filled with a familiar anxiety. "He's really good at math, Mrs. Willowbrook. He knows all the formulas." "Formulas are tools, Timmy, not the foundation. The foundation is understanding. And I know you understand more than you give yourself credit for." She rose and walked over to a whiteboard she'd brought in just for him. "Let's talk about something a little different today. Something that will truly set you apart." She picked up a marker and wrote, "Modular arithmetic." Timmy's brow furrowed. "Don't worry," she chuckled. "It sounds intimidating, but it's just a fancy way of talking about remainders." She drew a clock face. "Think about time. If it's 10 o'clock now, and we add 5 hours, it's not 15 o'clock, is it? It's 3 o'clock. That's modular arithmetic." Over the next hour, she patiently explained the concept, using examples of days of the week, the seasons, and even the rotations of planets. Timmy, initially hesitant, started to grasp the underlying logic. His fingers tapped nervously as he began to work through the practice problems. The whiteboard became a canvas of equations, arrows, and diagrams. "See?" Mrs. Willowbrook said, pointing to his successful solution of a particularly tricky problem. "You're already thinking in a way that Billy probably hasn't even considered. This isn't about memorizing formulas, it's about seeing patterns and relationships." She transitioned to another challenging topic, geometric sequences. Instead of simply presenting the formula, she told a story about a king who wanted to reward a clever inventor with grains of rice. 1 grain on the first square of a chessboard, 2 on the second, 4 on the third, and so on. Timmy's eyes widened as he calculated the sheer volume of rice required. He was no longer just plugging numbers into a formula, he was visualizing the exponential growth, the power of doubling. As they worked, Mrs. Willowbrook interspersed the math problems with anecdotes and words of encouragement. She reminded him of the progress he'd made since their first session, how he now tackled problems with a curiosity and determination he hadn't possessed before. She emphasized that the math mania competition wasn't about being perfect, but about challenging himself and celebrating his love for numbers. "Timmy," she said, leaning forward, her voice earnest. "You have a gift for seeing the world in a unique way. Don't let anyone dim that light. Billy's words are just that, words. Your actions, your effort, and your growing understanding are what truly matter." They spent the last part of the session working on practice problems from old math competitions. Mrs. Willowbrook didn't just give him the answers, she guided him through the thought process, encouraging him to explain his reasoning step by step. When he got stuck, she would ask leading questions, prompting him to discover the solution himself. One particularly challenging problem involved calculating the area of a shaded region within a complex geometric figure. Timmy stared at it, his brow furrowed. He started to panic. "I can't do this," he mumbled, his voice laced with defeat. Mrs. Willowbrook placed a hand on his arm. "Yes, you can, Timmy. Let's break it down. What shapes do you see? Can you find any relationships between them?" Slowly, painstakingly, she guided him through the problem. He identified the shapes, calculated their areas, and eventually, with a triumphant grin, arrived at the correct answer. "See?" Mrs. Willowbrook said, her eyes sparkling. "You had it in you all along. You just needed a little nudge." As Timmy packed up his books, a faint smile played on his lips. He wasn't completely free of anxiety, but a spark of confidence had been rekindled. He looked at Mrs. Willowbrook. "Thank you," he said, his voice clearer now. "For believing in me." "Always, Timmy," she replied, her smile radiating warmth. "Now go home and get some rest. Tomorrow, we conquer even more mathematical mountains." The Math Showdown. The gymnasium buzzed with an energy Timmy hadn't anticipated. Rows of folding tables stretched across the polished floor, each occupied by a contestant hunched over a sheet of paper. The air smelled faintly of floor wax and nervous sweat. Banners proclaiming "Math Mania" hung from the basketball hoops, their bright colors clashing with the seriousness etched on the faces of the participants. Timmy clutched his lucky pencil, a gift from Mrs. Willowbrook, its familiar weight a small comfort. He found his assigned table, number 23, and sat down, his heart hammering against his ribs. Billy, the brain Bartlett, was at table 4, smirking as he surveyed the competition. His eyes met Timmy's, and the smirk widened into a condescending grin. Timmy quickly looked away, focusing on the blank answer sheet in front of him. Mrs. Sterling, her voice amplified by the gymnasium sound system, explained the rules. "You will have 1 hour to complete 10 problems. Calculators are not permitted. Show your work. The top 3 scorers will receive prizes." Her voice was crisp and efficient, betraying no hint of the enthusiasm the banners suggested. She seemed tired, her shoulders slightly slumped. The starting bell rang, a jarring sound that made Timmy jump. He took a deep breath and read the first question. It was a simple equation, designed to ease them in. He scribbled down the answer, a wave of relief washing over him as he moved on to the second. The problems gradually increased in difficulty, but Timmy found himself surprisingly well prepared. He remembered Mrs. Willowbrook's lessons, the way she broke down complex concepts into manageable steps. He visualized the geometric sequences, the modular arithmetic, the patterns she had shown him. Each correct answer fueled his confidence, pushing back the lingering doubts that Billy had planted. He glanced around the room. Some contestants were already frowning, scratching their heads in frustration. Billy, however, was scribbling furiously, his brow furrowed in concentration. Timmy felt a surge of determination. He wouldn't let Billy intimidate him. He would focus on his own work, his own progress. The 7th problem stopped him cold. It involved prime factorization and a series of nested exponents, a combination he hadn't encountered before. He reread the question, circling key words, trying to decipher the underlying pattern. He tried a few approaches, but none seemed to lead to a solution. He looked up. The gymnasium was silent except for the scratching of pencils and the occasional frustrated sigh. He saw Billy staring intently at his own paper, his pen hovering above the page. Even the brain seemed stumped. Timmy resisted the urge to panic. He remembered Mrs. Willowbrook's advice: don't be afraid to experiment. Try different approaches. Even if you don't find the answer right away, you'll learn something in the process. He took another deep breath and started again. He broke down the problem into smaller components, focusing on the prime factorization first. He listed the prime factors of each number, searching for connections, for relationships. He tried rearranging the exponents, applying different mathematical properties. Time seemed to slow down. He could feel the pressure mounting, the weight of expectations pressing down on him. He glanced at the clock. Only 20 minutes remained. He noticed a pattern he hadn't seen before. A subtle relationship between the exponents and the prime factors. He felt a spark of excitement, a surge of hope. He quickly scribbled down his calculations, his pencil flying across the page. The numbers started to align, the equations began to make sense. He was close. He could feel it. He took a moment to check his work, ensuring he hadn't made any careless errors. He double-checked his calculations, verifying each step. Finally, he arrived at an answer. He wrote it down, a sense of accomplishment washing over him. Whether it was correct or not, he had tackled a difficult problem, he had persevered, he had refused to give up. He looked up again. Billy was still staring at the problem, his forehead creased in frustration. He chewed on the end of his pencil, a sign of his mounting anxiety. Timmy realized, with a strange sense of detachment, that Billy, for all his arrogance and bluster, was just as vulnerable to self-doubt as he was. The final bell rang, signaling the end of the competition. A collective sigh swept through the gymnasium. Contestants stretched, groaned, and compared answers. Timmy carefully placed his answer sheet on the designated table and walked out of the gymnasium, feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. He didn't know if he had won, or even placed, but he knew he had faced his fears, he had challenged himself, and he had learned something new. And that, he realized, was a victory in itself. A teacher's trick. The final problem shimmered on the projector screen, a beast of nested parentheses and exponents that seemed designed to induce panic. Even Billy, the brain Bartlett, was gnawing on the end of his pencil, his brow furrowed in concentration. Timmy stared, a familiar wave of anxiety threatening to engulf him. He could feel the weight of the audience's expectations, the hushed whispers, the clatter of Billy's frantic calculations. He squeezed his eyes shut for a moment, focusing on the image of Mrs. Willowbrook's sun-drenched porch. He could almost smell the lavender that climbed its trellis and hear the gentle creak of her rocking chair. "Don't let the big one scare you," she'd said, her voice a soothing balm. "Sometimes, the biggest problems are just a bunch of little ones hiding inside." He opened his eyes, the equation still daunting, but now, a flicker of recognition sparked within him. It wasn't just a monster, it was a puzzle. He remembered Mrs. Willowbrook's lesson on simplifying complex equations, the onion trick, she'd called it. You peeled away the layers, starting from the innermost parentheses, working your way outwards, one step at a time. Timmy took a deep breath and began to write. He copied the equation carefully onto his whiteboard, double-checking each number and symbol. Then, he focused on the innermost parentheses, a small cluster of numbers and an exponent. He solved that first, a small victory that gave him a surge of confidence. He moved to the next layer, combining the result with another number through multiplication. He remembered Mrs. Willowbrook's warning, order of operations, Timmy. PEMDAS is your friend. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication and division, addition and subtraction. He recited it silently as he worked, a mantra against the rising tide of panic. Billy, meanwhile, was scribbling furiously, his whiteboard filled with a chaotic jumble of numbers and symbols. He erased furiously, muttering under his breath. Timmy could see beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Timmy ignored him, lost in the rhythm of the calculation. He peeled away another layer, then another, each step bringing him closer to the solution. The numbers seemed to dance before his eyes, no longer menacing but inviting him to play. Finally, he reached the last step, a simple addition problem. He performed the calculation, his heart pounding in his chest. He double-checked his work, then triple-checked it, making sure he hadn't missed anything. The answer stared back at him, clear and undeniable. He raised his hand, his voice barely a whisper. I think I have the answer. Mayor Thompson, who was beaming proudly at Billy, looked surprised. Really, Timmy? Are you sure? Timmy nodded, his cheeks flushed. Yes, sir. All right then, let's hear it. Mayor Thompson said, a hint of impatience in his voice. Timmy took another deep breath and spoke, his voice gaining strength with each word. He stated the answer clearly and precisely. A hush fell over the room. The judges, 3 stern-faced math professors, huddled together, their heads bent over their calculators. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, as Timmy waited, his heart hammering against his ribs. Finally, one of the judges, a woman with spectacles perched on her nose, looked up. Correct, she announced, her voice ringing through the room. A gasp rippled through the audience. Billy Bartlett slumped in his chair, his face pale. Mayor Thompson's jaw visibly dropped. Incredible! Mayor Thompson exclaimed, recovering quickly. Well, folks, it seems we have a new Math Mania champion. Timmy Peterson. The room erupted in applause. Timmy stood frozen, stunned by the sudden turn of events. He had won. He, Timmy Peterson, had actually won. He saw Mrs. Willowbrook beaming at him from the front row, her eyes sparkling with pride. She gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod, as if to say, "I knew you could do it." As Mayor Thompson approached him with the trophy, a gleaming silver cup, Timmy thought not of the victory, but of the journey. He thought of Mrs. Willowbrook's patience, her encouragement, her unwavering belief in him, even when he didn't believe in himself. It wasn't just the onion trick that had helped him solve the problem, it was the teacher's trick of believing in her student. He accepted the trophy, a shy smile spreading across his face. He had faced his fear, embraced the challenge, and discovered a strength he never knew he possessed. And in that moment, Timmy realized that the real prize wasn't the trophy, but the newfound confidence that bloomed within him. The math competition wasn't a test of his intelligence, it was a testament to his resilience. A reunion of hearts. The buzzer sounded, a triumphant blare that echoed through the town hall, jolting Timmy from the intense focus that had gripped him. He'd done it. He'd actually solved the problem. A wave of disbelief washed over him, quickly followed by a surge of pure, unadulterated joy. He looked up, blinking in the bright lights, to see the mayor, Thomas Thompson, striding towards him, a wide, genuine smile plastered across his face. "Timmy. That was incredible." Mayor Thompson boomed, his voice carrying easily over the excited chatter of the crowd. He clapped Timmy on the back, a gesture that felt surprisingly gentle for such a large man. "Absolutely incredible. Billy the Brain's been the reigning champion for years. What changed, Timmy? What was your secret?" Timmy, still a little dazed, stammered, I just remembered what Mrs. Willowbrook taught me. To break it down. To not be scared of it." He gestured towards the back of the hall, where Mrs. Willowbrook stood, her eyes sparkling with pride. The mayor's gaze followed Timmy's hand. He paused, a flicker of confusion crossing his features. "Mrs. Willowbrook? You mean Eleanor Willowbrook?" Timmy nodded, his cheeks flushing pink. "Yes, sir. She's been helping me with my math." He felt a surge of protectiveness towards her, a fierce desire for the mayor to understand just how much she had helped him. "She's the best teacher ever." Mayor Thompson's expression softened, his eyes widening in recognition. He moved towards Mrs. Willowbrook, his pace quickening. As he approached her, a look of profound gratitude replaced the politician's practiced charm. "Mrs. Willowbrook," he asked, his voice surprisingly soft. "Is that really you?" Mrs. Willowbrook smiled, a radiant warmth emanating from her. "Thomas? Thomas Thompson? My goodness, look at you. The last time I saw you, you were a scrawny little boy with grass-stained knees." The mayor chuckled, the sound rumbling in his chest. He took Mrs. Willowbrook's hand, his grip firm and respectful. "Mrs. Willowbrook, you have no idea how much you mean to me. You were the best teacher I ever had. You made me believe I could actually understand fractions." He laughed again, a genuine, heartfelt sound. Timmy watched the exchange, a sense of wonder washing over him. He had known Mrs. Willowbrook was special, but seeing the mayor, a figure of such authority and importance, speak to her with such reverence was astonishing. The mayor turned back to the crowd, his voice regaining its characteristic resonance. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to someone incredibly special. This is Mrs. Eleanor Willowbrook, a woman who dedicated her life to educating the children of this town. And, as it turns out, she's been quietly working her magic once again, helping young Timmy Peterson rediscover his love for math." A ripple of applause spread through the hall, growing louder as more people realized who Mrs. Willowbrook was. Timmy beamed, his heart swelling with pride. Mayor Thompson raised his hand, silencing the crowd. I remember sitting in Mrs. Willowbrook's classroom, terrified of numbers, convinced I just wasn't good at math. But she never gave up on me. She saw something in me, something I didn't even see in myself. She taught me not just equations, but also the importance of perseverance, of believing in myself, even when things got tough. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the audience. We often take our educators for granted. We forget the profound impact they have on our lives, on the future of our community. But today, seeing Mrs. Willowbrook here, seeing the difference she's made in Timmy's life, I'm reminded of just how vital they are. The mayor turned back to Mrs. Willowbrook, his eyes filled with emotion. Thank you, Mrs. Willowbrook. Thank you for everything you've done for this town, for me. He then addressed the crowd once more, his voice ringing with renewed conviction. And that's why, today, I'm announcing a new initiative to support education in our town. We will be increasing funding for our schools, providing more resources for teachers, and creating new programs to help students of all ages succeed. We owe it to our children, to our future, to invest in their education. He paused, taking a deep breath. We will also be establishing the Eleanor Willowbrook Education Fund, dedicated to providing scholarships for students pursuing careers in education. It's time we recognize and reward the dedicated individuals who are shaping the minds of tomorrow. The crowd erupted in applause, a thunderous ovation that shook the hall. Timmy watched, his eyes shining with tears. He knew, in that moment, that something truly special had happened. Not just for him, but for the entire town. Mrs. Willowbrook's quiet dedication had sparked a flame, a renewed appreciation for the power of education and the importance of believing in yourself. As the applause began to die down, Mrs. Willowbrook leaned towards Timmy, her voice soft and filled with emotion. See, Timmy? You never know what good can come from simply doing your best. She squeezed his hand gently, her touch conveying a depth of understanding and encouragement that resonated deep within him. He looked back at her, and in that moment, he understood that the real prize wasn't the trophy or the recognition, but the journey of growth and self-discovery he had embarked on, guided by the unwavering belief of a truly remarkable teacher. The buzz of the crowd faded into the background, replaced by a profound sense of gratitude and hope. He now understood, more than ever, that math was not just about numbers and equations, but about perseverance, resilience, and the power of a kind heart.